Alan Budd was my first childhood friend from before primary school. The Budd family lived down the road next to my mother's parents. Alan's parents were from England and were very enterprising. They moved from Manurewa to Ponsonby, then to Langholm, and later other parts of West Auckland. Visiting Alan in Ponsonby completely changed my view of the world, from rural to urban. We stayed in touch for many years, but eventually drifted apart. David McGrail was my next best friend. He lived over the back fence from us. His father taught at Home High School and his mother was from Australia. The McGrails were a musical and Christian family, and on those points our paths diverged in our teenage years after the McGrail brothers formed a Christian pop band and I became interested in the English rock group The Who. Leslie Samways lived a few doors down from my father's parents in Sturdy Road. We almost had a roll in the hay as teenagers. Almost, but not quite. Leslie's virtuous nature and her father's shotgun were powerful deterrents. Linda Lasky's aunt, Nurse Lasky, facilitated my birth in an old house at 131 Great South Road, Manurewa. Linda still lives in the area, although I have not seen her for quite some years. Sandra Hansen was a close childhood friend to one of my sisters before the Hansens moved to East Auckland. Sandra was crowned Miss Auckland in the early 1970s. Alan Ferguson and I went to school together virtually from beginning to end. He was usually the brightest boy in class and was mostly successful in life. Since moving to North Taranaki a couple of years ago, Alan has had to face some rather serious health issues. Lorraine Guerra was my childhood sweetheart. She still lives in the area and we chat together from time to time. As well as I know her, I am quite sure that Lorraine will not take kindly to being included in this account. The Stevenson sisters, Carol, Lynn, and Kay, were highly regarded around town. It was at their place that Lorraine Guerra's older sister Glenys introduced me to the Who's recording of My Generation. For me, this was a truly underground event, as the record was banned from broadcast in New Zealand at the time. The house that Kendall Hayes grew up in was removed from this site and replaced by this newer house. Ken introduced me to John Burge's Ways of Seeing and Douglas Cooper's The Cubist Epoch in the 1970s, two books that opened me up to the possibilities of art. Ken later became an artist himself and moved to Australia. Graham Gunn arrived with his family from Scotland in our intermediate school years. Graham's father, who never liked me, was the minister at St Andrew's Church on Great South Road and was associated with a faction within the Presbyterian Church that unsuccessfully brought a charge of heresy against Professor George Gehring in 1967 for publicly stating that human beings do not have an immortal soul. David Russell was my best friend through high school and for many years after. We shared interests in shortwave radio and the American space program, which we monitored on the Voice of America. In the late 1960s, David introduced me to the wonders of stereo via a pair of headphones and Jimi Hendrix's Electric Ladyland. Ray Cooper was a year or two older than me and was somehow instrumental in convincing a local motorcycle club, of which he may have been a member, to attend a performance of a Shakespeare play in the city. Ray was later an assistant manager of the Pukekohe Hotel and the Jolly Farmer pub in Drury. After retiring, he moved to Asia. I remember seeing David Weston's band, Stained Cobweb, performing a cover of a Cream song. Or was it Hendrix? Inexplicably and unforgivably, David forsook a promising career of sex and drugs and rock and roll for a life sentence as an insurance broker and financial advisor. As far as I know, David never invested in experimental films. After leaving school, Paul McComish knocked around in various jobs before travelling overseas. After returning to New Zealand, Paul reconciled his passion for travel and the necessity to work by finding employment in the airline industry. I believe he now works in the construction industry. Vivian Diaz was from a Chilean immigrant family who lived over by the Lee Bank shops. A lovely young woman, Vivian died at the age of 18 in 1971, shortly after giving birth. As I heard it, Vivian had complained to the nursing staff at Middlemore Hospital that she was having heart problems. As a young, unmarried mother, the nursing staff pooh-poohed her. The next day, she died. Her baby died a couple of days later. Someone told me that Vivian's parents gave a photo of Vivian, dead in her coffin, to the father of her child. At 12 years of age, Benny Moses was the first of my childhood friends to die. Benny told me that he had fallen in a puddle of water and cut his knee, then the wound became infected. He was away from school for the longest time. A group of us caught a train to Middlemore Hospital to visit him. Benny, who was always a cheery fellow, was happy to see us and showed us his knee, which was swollen and fractured like a turtle shell. We kept hearing that Benny would be back at school soon. Then we were told that he had died. I had several friends at the Baptist Children's Home on Russell Road and visited them on occasion. All they had were single beds and tiny bedside cabinets placed next to each other in rows in huge hall-like dormitories. It was a bleak and sparse place, though preferable to the current practice of casting the unwanted out onto the streets. The last time I saw David Williamson was on Corrin Avenue one Saturday afternoon, as he was teaching himself how to operate a Bolex movie camera. David subsequently became a cinematographer in Australia. Stephen Kane's family migrated from London, England to Ellerslie, Papatoetoe, Mangere and eventually Manurewa. In their mid-teens, Stephen eloped with Margot Quidor, the daughter of German immigrants. I still see Stephen from time to time when I visit Wellington. Margot now lives in Australia. Stuart Wilson. What can I say? The guy needed professional help. I hope he got it. Though Peter Schaefer's play Equus springs to mind.